It's a wonderful early morning here at Lake Starnberg. It's around, I think it's 5 o'clock. It's a bit cold, but here we go for an early morning yoga wake-up session. And it's actually perfect if you're not yet fully awake, because you also want to just focus on observing and not being so into performance and our ego. We just want to have like an outside look on our bodies and how we're doing and how we're feeling, just checking in. So stand at the front of your mat, your feet hip-width apart. Make sure your feet are parallel with your big toe, second toe pointing forwards. And first of all, check into your feet and how your weight is distributed. You might want to sway forwards and backwards and checking your weight onto your heels and onto your toe mounts. And now start feeling the outside and inside of your feet. So the inner edges of your heels, the outer edges of your heels, and also your big toe mount and your little toe mount. And now first start to balance between your outer and your inner heel. And once you feel that middle, you might also start feeling a lift all the way up through the inside, the inner part of your thighs, into your hips. A little bit of a lift, maybe also going further up into your chest. And then focus on your toe mounts. Bring your big toe mount and your little toe mount down. You might want to lift your toes to really press the toe mounts down. And this actually creates a lift in the inner arches. So this really helps again for this lift all the way through the inner part of your thighs and into your hips and maybe even further up. And we call this the four corners of the foot. So you really have these four wheels like a car and balance your weight between these four wheels. Now for your full weight of the body, again, start shifting forwards and backwards a little and bring your weight just a little bit in front of your ankles, just a little bit, not too much forward so your heels lift, not too much backwards so that your mounts lift again, but just slightly in front of your ankle joints. Wonderful. So you should now feel a really stable base. This is the most important, that we are grounded. Keep your knees slightly bent. Your knees should be pointing forwards. And now check into your hips. You can touch your hip bone if you want to. You might want to move your hip a little bit. And now imagine you're wearing a very tight pants, like I'm actually wearing now. It's really tight. And you want to zip up your pants. So you're pulling the navel in and you're actually narrowing your hip points. Your front hip points are narrowing, like you're pulling the zip up and then really want to button in. Or maybe even pull it tight together. So you really feel this strength around your hips and this lift all the way up to your chest. So your chest is floating upwards. And your shoulders can simply relax for now on your chest. Now get one arm up and place your hand against the base of your skull, base of your head, and just slightly press into your hand. And this should float the back of your head up without compressing the front of your throat. So stay long in the front, all the way you're floating up through the back of your head. Now stay here And now reach through the little finger, reach down, reach forward, and all the way up as high as you can without actually losing your position in the chest. So chest stays lifted, but you're not overstretching just to go a little further with the arms. So stay connected. Your rib bones, your ribs stay connected. And just bring the little fingers as high up as you can by bringing the shoulder blades down and back. Very nice. Now if this pose starts to become a little bit heavy or boring, start to observe your breathing. Start to slowly breathe in and out. You can either breathe through the mouth or through the nose. Or if you want to, you can start raising onto the balls of your feet and then bring the heels back down again. Inhaling up, exhaling down, and really focus on your shoulder blades. Your shoulder blades should still float down. You want to create space between your little finger and the tips of your shoulder blades. A few more. Just warming up with this perception. Bringing the peace of the night into the day. And then we're coming from mountain pose into utanasana. Bring the arms down. Close your feet. You want your big toe mounds touching, and if possible also your heels. But stay with this grounding, with these four wheels where your weight is equally distributed. And keep zipping up your pants by narrowing the hip points, front hip points. Now shift your sitting bones backwards and slightly up. Your sitting bones should have like 45-degree angles pointing backwards. And your thighs, your knees, your ankles, your feet are pressing together, creating that grounding, that strength from the bottom up into the hips. And your back actually has the same position as before, narrowing the hip points, chest floating up, long neck without compressing the front of your throat. And then bring the arms down. Now if you want to, come all the way with the arms to your knees, to the front, and lift and elongate into your little fingers. So again, you create space from your little fingers into the tips of your shoulder blades. Your shoulder blades are floating down towards your hips. Be careful not to overstretch, not to lean back too much. You still want to keep your belly button in. Pull the navel in and narrow your hip points for creating stability in your core. Make sure not to contract the shoulders. Shoulder blades floating down. Keep breathing. You can either breathe through your nose. If you want your diaphragm to work a little harder, or through the mouth. Keep your neck long. You can lower down a little bit more, but keep your belly tight and contracted. Well done. Now from here we're tipping forward into a tabletop. So the back stays in the same position. The back hasn't moved since we came from our standing pose. Now you can either keep your knees slightly bent, or if you're really flexible, you can stretch your legs. But most important, keep your heels down. So you do still want to have your four wheels on the floor. And maybe it's good, because we're still warming up, to keep your knees slightly bent. Now tip your hip bones forward as much as you can. Lift your sitting bones and bring as much space as possible between your sitting bones and your heels. So you're really creating length in the back of your legs. Now stay gentle. It's only your... And now pull your arms alongside your upper body. And now we're going to focus on our thumbs. Your thumbs are going to rotate outside. This creates a little contraction between your shoulder blades. So you do want to create a pull towards each other. You want to pull the shoulder blades towards the spine and down. Very good. Keep the heels down, knees bend if you need to, and keep your neck long. Really, the back and the head hasn't moved much. The leg have been doing all the work in the arms for now. And keep breathing. This is a great exercise for back strength and, of course, for leg flexibility. Now try, if you can, lift your kneecaps up in this pose. This will contract your thighs, your quadriceps, and create a lot more stability in this pose. So try to pull your kneecaps up a little. They might drop down once you stop focusing on your kneecaps. That's all right. Just try again. And then exhale and relax down. We're coming into a forward fold, utanasana. And you might want to bring your feet hip-width apart again, or you can keep them close. And we're really hanging forward as if you want a shirt or a dress to slip off your back onto the floor. And you can either have your hands hanging or slightly touching the floor, or if you want to, you bring either hand in the opposite elbow. And just relax your head, relax your arms. This is really a back relaxation. Keep your knees bent as much as you need. And try to still feel the four wheels, the four corners of your foot, the big toe mount, little toe mount. And don't collapse in the arches, but still keep this lift up from your inner arches. If you stop feeling your toe mounts, you can always lift your toes, and this will press down your toe mounts. Very nice. Then release your hands down, and we're starting to build foundation for plank pose, dandasana. So start by bringing your hands shoulder width apart. Your middle finger should be parallel, pointing forward. And before we're stepping back, really try to ground your hands. Now, our hands are like our feet. So we do have our index finger mount and our pinky finger mount, but also we have our two heels at the base of the hand. So try to balance your weight between these 4 points, and usually the mount of the index finger comes too far up. So really focus on bringing your index finger mount down, press it down. This will create something like an inward rotation, as if your hands are rotating towards each other. That's fine. We are gonna do a counter circle or counter rotation with our shoulder blades. So the shoulders, just like in standing, are pulling towards the spine. The tips of your shoulder blades are pulling in. So remember, hands are turning towards each other, while shoulders are rotating outwards. This is like a spiral. Now you should really feel the stability. They should feel really grounded and really strong. And from this position, you want to shift your weight slightly in front of your wrist. You don't want to be behind your wrist, just pushing forward. You want to be over your wrist. And then simply, from this very strong position, step back and try to have this standing posture all throughout your body. You want to push into your toe mounts, but also into your heels. Although they're not on the floor now, but you can imagine you're pushing in an imaginary wall behind you. So you still want to have shoulders and your ears aligned. You're gazing down between your hands. And now again, bring your navel in, your hip points pulling toward each other. This is a really strong pose. And if you really pull your navel in, your hip points towards each other, you should feel like a lift from the center, like an arch lifting from the middle. And keep breathing, probably through the mouth right now. Just stay here. And this is really a wake up. And observe what's happening. And then bring your knees down. Bring your toe mounts down. And you do want to create a little bit of a push through your feet. This gives you a little bit of more extra energy for this push-up. But really focus on your hands as well. They need to work a bit more. And focus again on these four corners of your hands. The index finger pressing down, all four corners, but the index finger especially, slightly rotating in, while your shoulder blades are pulling towards the spine, so your elbows actually pointing backwards. Now, try to get your chest and your thighs into a straight line. It's perfectly fine if you're pushing a little bit further forward. This will actually help you going down. Now, inhale, going down, exhale, pressing up. And really focus, not on the push-up, not on this like an exercise, but really look if your elbows are pointing backwards, if your chest, if your collarbone is still wide. Don't collapse in the shoulder. And if you need a break, just have one. This is not a workout. This is for you to really focus on how we do things. Exhale up. And last time, still pull your hip bones together. And last one, good news. You can just bring your chest down and relax. Well done. So now legs stay on the floor. You can bring the back of your feet down, and we still want to have a little bit of a pull through the belly. So the belly feels like you're lifting from the ground. Maybe you actually do. So your pubic bone slightly tips to the mat or to the ground, and your tailbone elongates toward your heels. And this creates the stability for the lower back that we need now, because we're bringing up. So they don't need to go very high up. So stay close to the ground. Your little fingers touch the ground first, and then you lift up by pulling your shoulder blades towards the spine and towards your hips. So it's not a movement coming from the arms, but really from the shoulder blades pulling back and down. Always have a relaxed neck, the shoulders away from the ears, and you're actually looking down, not forward. Now try again, like in Utkatasana, to press your pinky fingers forwards, all the while you're pulling the tips of your shoulder blades backwards and towards the spine. And this will create the length in your arms and also create the space for your neck and shoulders that you need. Keep breathing and keep pressing your feet down. You will feel your glutes contract the lower back, though this should not be painful, and relax if you need to. Stay here a few more times. Try to breathe slowly. Yoga really also is about slowing down the breath, observing, and then release. and bring the hands back onto your shoulders. Hands are shoulder width apart, middle fingers parallel pointing forwards. And again, we're grounding our hands, feeling the four corners of our hands first, pressing the mount of the index finger down especially, because that's the one who usually lifts up first. Then bring your elbows in. We need to strength for pushing up into downward facing dog. So first, we bring toe mounts down. You can push yourself onto your knees. Now push through your arms as I can push up and backwards, heels towards, hips towards the heels, and then rise up through the heels, through your hips. And you do just want to have your head long, neck is long. Keep breathing. First, adjust in the pose and have a look at your hands. Index finger pressing down. And again, we want to create a lot of space between the hands and the shoulders. So hands are pushing down while your shoulder blades are pulling towards the spine and towards each other. This creates the length and the stability. And this should feel really good right now. Opening the chest, breathing gets really easy. And for your feet, up to you. I like pressing onto my toe mounts because this really creates a lift through the arches and through the inside inner part of the thighs. But you can also push down through your heels. This creates a bit more grounding energy. And really for your hips, the lower back, it's the same as in standing. We're still having an open chest. Chest is floating. Navel is pulling in. Hip points are narrowing, and you're trying to bring your sitting bones at least like 30 degrees up to the sky. If you can, 45. So your sit bones should be pointing up a little. Now stay here. We're coming into down dog split. But first, bring your feet together. Close your feet. Make sure your hands are still firmly connected to the ground, especially the mount of your index finger. Bring your feet together. You really want to bring your big toe mounts together. And as you prefer, you can either raise onto your balls of the foot or pressing the heel down as you like, creating a bit more lift or being a bit more grounded. Now stay in your left foot and really focus on pressing the ball of your foot down. This is also really important for foot flexibility. And then circle your right leg up. I do actually prefer yogi toes for the flying leg. That means my foot is point as far as I can, and then flexing the toes. And this really creates a push through the toe mounts, but I can also focus on the heel pushing out. So really having an inversed standing position here means our legs should be in line with the upper body, with the ears, the head, and if possible with the arms. And also the action in the belly is just the same as if we were standing. And we're trying to narrow the hip points. This will lengthen the tailbone towards the flying leg. And pulling the navel in will close the rib cage a little bit. So we're not like pushing down through the spine as much as possible, but we're actually having a very stable position here. Also make sure to check in your hands every now and then, pressing your index fingers down, staying strong through the hands. You can think about this like a handstand. And then slowly bend your knee. We're coming forward into warrior pose. So you can either swing your knee front in one go or have little steps forward. We're starting in warrior one. So feet are facing front, and you do want to separate your feet a little bit for better stability, unless you do want a little bit of a challenge. And then really start to ground your forward foot. This is the only foot firmly on the ground. The back foot will stay on the toe mounts. And the forward foot does the same action as in standing. So we do want to have our weight slightly forward of the ankle without having the knee in front of the toes. And once you have this stability, this grounding, check into your hip points and really get your strength into your hips, narrowing the hip points, pulling the navel in, and bring the chest up. Now this depends a little bit on the flexibility of your psoas, your hip flexor. So wherever you are is fine. You can also stretch your forward leg a little bit so you can stand upright. If possible, go further down and push through your back heel. You're pushing into your toe mounts onto the ground, but also against an imaginary wall behind you with your heel. Now with your arms, same as in standing. So your upper body is still doing the same standing action, pulling the hip points together, navel in, and then arms rise up, bringing your pinky fingers towards the ceiling or the sky, and the tips of your shoulder blades are floating downwards and slightly towards the spine. So this really creates length in your arms and widen your shoulders. Think about your head for a moment. Keep your throat relaxed, so don't pull your chin in, but the floor of your mouth should be parallel to the ground, and the back of your head should slightly float up. Very nice. And then from here, bring the arms down. Focus on your forward leg. We're going to come in pose of warrior 3. This is going to be a big workout for your leg, but hey, this is your morning warm-up. Have a little jump and then come into warrior pose. So you might want to start with your hands onto your hips, really tipping your hips forward and also making sure that your hip points are still facing the floor. Hip points facing forward. It might get a little bit wobbly, but once you focus on your 4 wheels, the inner toe mount, outer toe mount, and the inner and outer arch of your heel, you're actually pretty stable. Now we have 2 actions here. We have one leg pressing down, and this leg can actually also be slightly bent. And we have one leg pressing backwards. We have like a flying standing pose. So we're pushing through the foot backwards while bringing and narrowing our hip points, pulling the navel in. And now if you want to, you can bring your arms overhead, or this time forward. As you might have guessed, we are bringing the pinky fingers forward and we're pulling our shoulder blades back towards the hips. If it gets wobbly, it's fine. Just keep breathing. And then exhale, bringing your hands down. We're stepping back into downward facing dog. So first of all, bring your hands shoulder width apart, middle fingers are parallel, pushing your index fingers down, mount of your index fingers firmly grounded, and you do want to keep your shoulder blades pulling towards the spine and down towards the hip. This creates the grounding and the support. just step back into downward facing dog. Very nice. And you might want to walk a little bit on the spot just to relax the leg that kept working quite a bit. Right leg can relax now in a second. And walk your feet together. So we're coming into down dog split. But first, check your base. Check your hands. Index finger, amount of the index finger pushing down. Shoulder blades pulling towards the spine and down, or this way up to your hips. And your big toe mound, your small toe mound, touching and pushing into the floor. And you might want to rise again onto your heels or pushing down into the floor as you like. I do like to rise and lift. Now have a look at your hip position. You do want to tip your hip forward as much as possible. Bring your hip bones toward your thighs, elongating the back of your spine. Now lift your leg up, and again I like to have my yogi toes, but you can also just flex the foot or point. Just choose where you have the most control into this leg, because this needs to be like a standing leg, like a flying standing pose. So you do want to check in that your leg is in line with your upper body. It's like a handstand, but with one foot still on the floor. Press your index finger mounds down and really ground through your arms. Keep your chest open, your shoulders wide, relax your head. Breathe deeply. And then bend your knee and bring your foot forward in between your hands. You can step forward multiple times if you need to. And we're coming into warrior pose. Separate your feet a little bit for better stability. And really check into your feet. Feet are facing forward. And you do really want to have the four corners of your foot down again. If you lose your toe mounds, it's always nice to bring your toes up. Really feel the lift through the arches. And then just relax the toes down. Feel this grounding and this lift through the inside of your legs and into your hips. Now, bring your hands onto your hip bones and come all the way up. Your upper body really is standing. Navel is pulling in. Chest is floating up like in standing pose, in mountain pose. But we're pressing backwards with our heel. Toe mounds are down. And now if you want to, circle the arms forward and up. You're bringing your pinky fingers up. Your shoulder blades are pulling down. And I know we lose it sometimes, and we just want to hold the pose or be as good as we can in the pose or go as low as we can. But also always check into the spaces in your body. If you're still respecting the space in your lower back, not compressing, space in your chest. Chest is floating up, breathing easily. Your throat is not compressed, and the back of your head can float up easily. And this should be a nice strong pose. A few more breaths through the nose or through your mouth. And then bring the arms down. We're jumping into warrior 3. Might start with having your hands onto your hip bones, come into balance position, tipping forward. Ideally, your hip bones go parallel to the ground, so they're not opening, but both hip bones are parallel to the ground. Again, narrowing, pulling the navel in. And this flying leg, again, try to control this flying leg as much as possible, either by flexing your foot, pointing, or a mix of the two, pointing the foot but flexing the toes. The standing leg can be flexed, slightly bent, but keep the weight on the four corners of your foot. And really, for the rest of the body, you're almost like you're standing in the air, barely pulling in. Throat is open, back of the neck elongated, and then lift the arms forward. And your pinky fingers are pointing forwards, and your shoulder blades are pulling towards the spine and towards your hips. Last effort here before we're done. This might get wobbly. It's fine. And from here, we're simply gonna come up to standing. Have a breathe, have a big breath. And I hope you enjoyed as much as possible this amazing Lake Starnberg, this sunrise, and this early morning yoga. See you soon. Bye.